took my wife's phone for repair. The technician, a family friend, pulled me aside, his face pale, and whispered, "Buy a ticket and leave the country." In shock, I asked, "What's going on?" That's when he showed me the screen. What I saw that day changed my life forever. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought a simple phone repair would destroy everything I believed about my 12-year marriage to Melissa. It was a Tuesday morning in October when her iPhone finally gave up after she dropped it down the stairs the night before. The screen was completely shattered, spider-webbed beyond recognition, and it wouldn't turn on no matter what we tried. "Honey, can you take this to Jake's shop?" Melissa asked, wrapping the broken device in a kitchen towel like it was an injured bird. "I have that important conference call with the Portland office this afternoon, and I really need my contacts." Jake Morrison had been fixing electronics in our neighborhood for over 8 years. More than that, he'd become a family friend. He'd been to our barbecues, fixed our laptop when it crashed with all our vacation photos, and even helped us set up our smart TV last Christmas. If anyone could resurrect Melissa's phone, it would be Jake. I drove the 15 minutes to his small repair shop on Maple Street, the familiar bell chiming as I pushed through the glass door. Jake looked up from behind his cluttered workbench, safety glasses perched on his forehead, a tiny screwdriver in his hand. "Roger, what brings you in today?" His smile was warm, genuine, the same one I'd seen countless times before. "Melissa's phone took a tumble down the stairs last night," I said, unwrapping the damaged device. "She's hoping you can work your magic and get her contacts back at least." Jake took the phone, examining it under his desk lamp. "Ouch, she really did a number on this one. The screen's toast, but the internal components might be okay. Give me about an hour to see what I can do." I left the shop and grabbed coffee at the diner next door, reading the local paper and checking my watch every few minutes. Melissa's conference call was at 2:30, and it was already past noon. When I returned to Jake's shop, the bell's cheerful chime seemed different somehow, more urgent. Jake was standing behind his counter, but something was wrong. His usual easy smile was gone, replaced by a tense expression I'd never seen before. His hands were shaking slightly as he held Melissa's phone, now sporting a temporary screen protector. "Roger," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you." The way he said it made my stomach drop. "Is the phone completely dead? Because if you can't save it—" No, the phone's fine. I got it working." Jake glanced around his empty shop, then moved closer to me, lowering his voice even further. "But Roger, man, I saw something. When I powered it up to test the repair, messages started coming through, and he swallowed hard. "I think you need to buy a ticket and leave the country." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What did you just say?" Jake's face had gone pale. "I'm serious, Roger. What I saw on that screen. You need to see this. But you also need to be prepared to run." My heart started pounding. "Jake, you're scaring me. What the hell are you talking about?" He handed me the phone with trembling fingers. "Look at the text messages, the recent ones." I took the device, my hand suddenly unsteady. The screen showed Melissa's message app, and the most recent conversation was with someone named Victor. I'd never heard her mention anyone by that name. The messages made my blood run cold. "The work is almost finished. He suspects nothing." "Good. Timeline remains the same?" "Yes. 2 more weeks maximum. He's been asking fewer questions lately." "Perfect. Remember, he cannot discover the truth until we're ready. Everything depends on maintaining the illusion." "I understand. It's harder than I thought it would be, but I can keep this up a little longer." "You're doing excellent work, Em. The organization appreciates your dedication. Just promise me he'll be safe when this is over. Despite everything, I've grown attached. That was not part of the original plan, but we'll discuss it when the time comes." I felt the blood drain from my face. My wife, my Melissa, was involved in something that required maintaining an illusion about me. Someone she was supposed to keep fooled until they were ready for me to discover something. The clinical, detached tone of the messages was nothing like the warm, loving woman I'd shared a bed with for 12 years. "There's more," Jake said quietly, watching my face. "Keep scrolling up." I scrolled through more messages, each one making my chest tighter. "Target remains unaware of surveillance. Daily routines documented. Has he mentioned any travel plans? We need advance notice. No travel planned. He's predictable." Same routes to work, same grocery store, same gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Excellent. Predictability makes this easier. Victor. Sometimes I wonder if we're doing the right thing. Don't get emotional now, Em. You knew what this job required when you accepted it. Target. They were calling me a target. My own wife was documenting my daily routines, reporting on my movements to someone who spoke about me like I was a mark in some kind of operation. Jesus Christ, I whispered, nearly dropping the phone. Jake nodded grimly. That's not even the worst part. Look at the photo gallery. With shaking fingers, I opened Melissa's photos. Mixed in with normal pictures of our life together, family dinners, vacation shots, pictures of our garden, were dozens of photos I'd never seen before. Photos of me, taken from a distance, me leaving the house in the morning, me at the grocery store, me at my office building, me having lunch at the corner cafe, completely unaware I was being photographed. She's been documenting me, I said, my voice hollow. Stalking me. But why? We're married. Why would she need to? I don't know, Roger. But whatever this is, it's not good. The way they're talking about timelines and organizations. This sounds professional. Dangerous. I thought about Melissa that morning, kissing me goodbye with the same sweet smile she'd worn for 12 years. Making my coffee exactly how I liked it. Asking me to take her phone to be repaired, knowing full well what was on it. Had she wanted me to find this? Was this part of their timeline? There's one more thing, Jake said, hesitating. Look at the contact list. I scrolled through Melissa's contacts and my heart nearly stopped. There were dozens of names I didn't recognize, many with no last names, just initials or code words. Watchdog, Phoenix, Cleanup, Exit Strategy. These weren't the contacts of a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized furniture company. These were the contacts of someone involved in something I couldn't even begin to understand. Jake, I said, my voice barely working. What do you think this means? He shook his head. I don't know, but Roger, listen to me. 12 years is a long time to maintain a cover story. If your wife isn't who you think she is, if this whole marriage has been some kind of operation, you could be in serious danger. I stared at the phone in my hands. This device that had shattered far more than just its screen when it fell down our stairs. It had shattered my entire reality. What do I do? Honestly, I meant what I said about leaving the country. At the very least, don't go home tonight. Find somewhere safe to think this through. I felt like I was drowning. The woman I'd loved for 12 years, the woman I'd planned to grow old with, had been living a complete lie. But the worst part was the growing realization that I had no idea what the truth actually was, or how much danger I might be in. As I walked out of Jake's shop, Melissa's repaired phone clutched in my trembling hand. I knew my life as Roger Williams was over. I just didn't know what was going to replace it. I couldn't bring myself to go home that night. Instead, I checked into the Holiday Inn on the other side of town, paying cash and using a fake name, feeling ridiculous but also terrified. I told Melissa I was helping my brother move some furniture and would be staying at his place overnight. The lie came so easily, I realized I was already becoming someone I didn't recognize. Lying on that stiff hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed every moment of our 12-year marriage. Had there been signs? Moments when Melissa seemed like a stranger? The more I thought about it, the more things started clicking into place in the most disturbing way. Her job, for instance. Melissa claimed to work as a marketing coordinator for Pinnacle Furniture, but now that I really thought about it, I'd never met a single one of her co-workers. She'd always had excuses when I suggested dropping by her office or attending company parties. It's a small, family-run business, she'd say. Very low-key. They don't really do social events. And her schedule had always been oddly flexible. She could work from home whenever she wanted, leave early for client meetings, take long lunch breaks. What kind of marketing coordinator had that much freedom? I'd always envied her relaxed work environment, but now it seemed suspicious. The next morning, I called in sick to my own job at the accounting firm and decided to do something I'd never imagined doing in 12 years of marriage. I was going to investigate my wife. I drove to the address Melissa had always given as her workplace. Pinnacle Furniture was supposed to be in a small office complex on Industrial Boulevard. When I arrived, I found the building easily enough, but there was no Pinnacle Furniture. The suite number Melissa had given me housed a tax preparation service. I checked with the building manager, a heavy-set man named Carl who'd worked there for 15 years. Pinnacle Furniture? Carl scratched his head. Never heard of them, and I know every business that's been in this building. You sure you got the right address? I showed him the business card Melissa had given me years ago, the one with her name and this address. Carl studied it and shook his head. This is our address, but there's never been a furniture company here. This card looks real professional, though. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make it. My stomach churned. Even her business cards were fake. I thanked Carl and sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to process this revelation. If Melissa didn't work where she said she worked, what had she been doing for 12 years? Where did she go every day when she left the house in her business attire, carrying her laptop bag and talking about client presentations? I decided to follow her. The next morning I told Melissa I had an early meeting and left the house before her. But instead of going to work, I parked 3 blocks away and waited. At exactly 8:15, her silver Honda Civic pulled out of our driveway. I followed her, keeping several cars between us, feeling like I was in a spy movie, except this was my real life falling apart. Melissa didn't drive toward Industrial Boulevard. Instead, she headed across town to an area I rarely visited, eventually pulling into the parking garage of a modern office building downtown. I watched from across the street as she emerged from her car and walked into the building with confident, purposeful strides. She didn't look like someone heading to a fake job. She looked like someone who belonged there. The building directory listed dozens of companies, but none named Pinnacle Furniture. There was Henderson and Associates Law Firm, Meridian Consulting Group, Apex Financial Services, and about 20 others. I spent the rest of the morning in the coffee shop across the street, watching the building entrance, but Melissa never came out. When I finally went home that evening, she was already there, cooking dinner and asking about my day with the same warm smile she'd worn for 12 years. "How was your meeting this morning?" she asked, stirring what smelled like her famous marinara sauce. "Fine," I said, watching her face carefully. "How was your day? Any interesting projects at Pinnacle?" "Oh, the usual client demands. Mrs. Patterson wants to completely redesign her living room again. 3rd time this year." She laughed, but I was studying her expression now, looking for tells I'd never noticed before. "That's frustrating. Maybe I should stop by your office sometime, meet this Mrs. Patterson." For just a split second, something flickered across Melissa's face. It was so brief I almost missed it, but there was definitely a moment of panic before her smile returned. "Oh, she never comes to the office. I always meet clients at their homes. More convenient for them, Another lie, delivered as smoothly as if it were the truth. That night, after Melissa fell asleep, I carefully went through her things. I'd never snooped before, had never felt the need to, but now I was searching for anything that might explain who my wife really was. In her jewelry box, hidden beneath the velvet lining, I found a passport. Not just any passport. A passport with Melissa's photo, but a different name. Elena Vasquez. The passport was American, but it was only 3 years old. According to this document, Elena Vasquez was 31 years old, which would make her 5 years younger than the Melissa I'd married. My hands were shaking as I photographed the passport with my phone and carefully put it back. In the back of her closet, behind winter coats we rarely used, I found a small duffel bag. Inside were stacks of cash. I estimated about $15,000, along with a different cell phone, one I'd never seen before. I powered on the phone. It was password protected, but the lock screen showed several missed calls from control and a text message preview that made my blood freeze. Timeline moved up. Extraction may be necessary sooner than planned. Extraction. They were talking about extracting something or someone. Was that someone me? I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and lay in bed next to Melissa, listening to her steady breathing, wondering who was really sleeping beside me. Elena Vasquez? Some kind of operative working for an organization that saw me as a target? A woman who'd been lying to me for 12 years, documenting my movements, reporting on my daily routines to someone named Victor? The worst part was that even knowing all this, part of me still loved her. When she rolled over in her sleep and put her arm around me, my heart still fluttered the way it had for 12 years. The woman I'd fallen in love with, the one who made me laugh and brought me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, felt real even if everything else was a lie. But as I lay there in the dark, one terrifying thought kept circling through my mind. If Melissa had been living a lie for 12 years, what did that mean for me? Was I just a job to her, a long-term assignment? And more importantly, what happened when that assignment was over? The messages on her phone suggested a timeline, an ending point where I would discover the truth. But what truth? And would I survive learning it? I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Melissa had seemed genuinely surprised by anything I'd said or done. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she always seemed to know what I was going to say before I said it. Always seemed prepared for my reactions, because she'd been studying me. For 12 years, she'd been studying me like a specimen, documenting my patterns, reporting my behaviors, maintaining an illusion while working toward some mysterious deadline. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I was going to start studying her right back. If Melissa could live a double life for 12 years, I could learn to do it for however long it took to find out the truth. I just hoped the truth wouldn't kill me. The revelation came on a Thursday morning, 3 days after I'd started my own investigation into the woman I'd called my wife for 12 years. I'd been following Melissa's routine, documenting her movements the same way she'd been documenting mine, when everything I thought I knew about her deception turned out to be wrong in the most unexpected way. I was parked across from that downtown office building again, watching through binoculars I'd bought at a sporting goods store, when I saw Melissa emerge with a woman I'd never seen before. The woman was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair and the kind of haunted look in her eyes that spoke of recent trauma. She was clutching a small suitcase and looking around nervously, as if she expected someone dangerous to appear at any moment. Melissa had her arm around the woman's shoulders, speaking to her in low, reassuring tones. There was something maternal about the gesture, protective in a way that didn't match the cold, calculating operative I'd imagined my wife to be. They walked to Melissa's car together, and I followed them, keeping a safe distance. They drove to a small apartment complex on the east side of town, the kind of place where people went when they needed to disappear for a while. I watched from the parking lot as Melissa helped the woman carry her suitcase upstairs to a second-floor unit. Through the window, I could see Melissa moving around the apartment, apparently showing the woman how things worked, where everything was located. When Melissa finally came back downstairs alone, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of following her, I waited until her car disappeared, then walked up to that second-floor apartment and knocked on the door. The young woman answered cautiously, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Yes? I'm sorry to bother you," I said, trying to sound as non-threatening as possible. "I'm Roger Williams. The woman who just left here, Melissa, she's my wife. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding about what she does for work, and I'm trying to figure out what's really going on." The woman's eyes widened, and she looked genuinely confused. "Your wife?" But Melissa said she wasn't married. She wasn't. She said this work was too dangerous for family relationships. My heart sank. Even to the people she was helping, Melissa had denied my existence. "Can I ask what kind of work she's helping you with?" The woman hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. She closed the door, removed the chain, and opened it again. "My name is Carmen," she said, "and if you're really Melissa's husband, then you should know that your wife saves lives." I stared at her. Saves lives. Carmen nodded, stepping aside to let me into the sparsely furnished apartment. "She helped me escape from my ex-husband. He was going to kill me. I tried going to the police, but he has connections there. He's a deputy sheriff, and every time I filed a report, it disappeared. Every time I tried to leave, he found me." "And Melissa helped you how?" "There's this organization," Carmen explained, sitting on the edge of a simple couch. "They help women like me disappear when the system fails us. New identities, safe houses, relocation assistance. Melissa coordinates the local operations. She's been doing this for years, helping women escape abusive situations when law enforcement can't or won't protect them." I felt like the world was tilting beneath my feet. An organization? "They call it the Phoenix Network, Women Helping Women Survive. Melissa told me she's personally helped over 40 women start new lives in the past 8 years. She said it's the most important work she's ever done." The pieces started falling into place, but not in the way I'd expected. The fake job, the flexible schedule, the mysterious contacts in her phone, the cash hidden in our closet, even the passport with a different name. It all made sense now, but not as evidence of a threat to me. It was evidence of an underground network helping domestic violence victims escape their abusers. "Carmen," I said carefully, "when Melissa talks about this work, does she ever mention someone named Victor?" Carmen's face lit up. "Victor's amazing. He's the one who coordinates the safe houses and new identity documents. Melissa says he used to be with the government, some kind of federal marshal, but he left to start this network after his own sister was killed by her abusive husband. The police couldn't protect her either. I thought about the text messages I'd seen, reading them now with completely different context. The work is almost finished wasn't about completing some sinister mission against me. It was about getting Carmen safely relocated. He suspects nothing wasn't about me being unaware of danger to myself. It was about Carmen's ex-husband not knowing where she'd gone. Carmen, I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Has Melissa ever mentioned being worried about her husband's safety? About someone named Roger being in danger? Carmen looked confused. No, why would? Wait. Her expression grew concerned. Is someone threatening you? Is that why you're here? I don't know, I said honestly. I found some messages on Melissa's phone that made me think I was in danger, but now I'm wondering if I misunderstood everything. What kind of messages? I showed Carmen some of the screenshots I'd taken of Melissa's texts with Victor. As she read them, her expression grew more and more alarmed. Roger, she said slowly, I think you need to understand something. The women we help, their abusers don't just give up when they disappear. They hunt, and sometimes they target the people who helped their victims escape. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that if your wife has been helping women like me for 8 years, she's made enemies. Dangerous enemies. Men who blame her for taking away what they considered their property. Carmen's voice was shaking now. My ex-husband, Deputy Mark Sanderson. He's been trying to track down everyone involved in my disappearance. He's obsessed with revenge. And you think he might target Melissa? Not just Melissa, Carmen said, her face pale. Anyone close to her. Anyone he could use as leverage to get to her or to force her to reveal where I am. The room seemed to spin around me. All this time I'd thought Melissa was the threat. I'd thought she was some kind of operative working against me, but the reality was infinitely worse. Melissa was a hero, risking her own safety to help vulnerable women, and I was the liability. I was the weakness that could be exploited against her. Carmen, the photos on Melissa's phone, the ones of me going about my daily routine, those weren't for surveillance. They were for protection, weren't they? She was documenting my patterns so she could spot if anything changed, if someone was following me or threatening me. Carmen nodded grimly. The network teaches volunteers to watch for signs that their families might be at risk. Your wife has been protecting you without you even knowing it. I felt sick. While I'd been suspecting Melissa of betraying me, she'd been risking everything to protect both me and women like Carmen. The fake job, the mysterious schedule, the hidden cash for emergencies. It was all part of an elaborate system designed to save lives. There's something else you need to know, Carmen said quietly. 3 days ago, Deputy Sanderson figured out that someone in this area helped me disappear. He's been asking questions, threatening people. Melissa got word that he might be getting close to identifying her. Is that why the timeline got moved up? Why they're talking about extraction? Probably. If Sanderson finds out who Melissa is, he won't just come after her. He'll come after you too, to force her to give up information about me and the other women she's helped. Carmen's voice was barely above a whisper. Roger, your wife didn't just save my life. She's been saving dozens of lives. But now, because of me, both of you might be in terrible danger. I stood up abruptly, my mind racing. Everything I'd discovered about Melissa's deception was true, but I'd completely misunderstood what it meant. She wasn't a threat to me. She was protecting me from threats I didn't even know existed. And now, those threats were closing in. I have to go, I said, heading for the door. Roger, wait, Carmen called after me. If Melissa hasn't told you about any of this, there's a reason. The less you know, the safer you are. But if you confront her now, if you force her to involve you, then what? I turned back to her. Then you become part of the network, and that means you become a target for every violent man whose victim we've helped escape. Are you ready for that? I thought about Melissa, lying beside me every night for 12 years, carrying the weight of this secret work, protecting me from knowledge that could get me killed. I thought about Carmen and the 40 other women Melissa had helped save. I thought about Deputy Mark Sanderson and whoever else might be hunting for the people who'd given their victims a chance at freedom. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I'm ready. As I walked back to my car, I realized that my marriage wasn't ending. It was finally beginning. Because for the first time in 12 years, I was going to know who my wife really was, and I was going to help her save lives, even if it meant risking my own. But first, I had to convince Melissa to trust me with the truth, and given how good she'd become at lying to protect me, that might be the most dangerous mission of all. The truth about who Melissa really was came crashing down on me 3 days later, and it was far more complex and dangerous than anything I could have imagined. I'd spent those 3 days trying to figure out how to confront my wife about her secret life with the Phoenix Network. But before I could work up the courage, fate made the decision for me. I was at home that Friday evening, pretending to read the newspaper while actually watching Melissa pace around the living room, talking in hushed tones on that second phone I'd discovered. Her conversation was clearly urgent, punctuated by long pauses and responses like, "How did he find out?" and "Are you absolutely certain?" When she finally hung up, her face was pale and drawn in a way I'd never seen before. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the phone in her hand, and I could see her shoulders trembling slightly. "Bad day at work?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She looked up at me, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Roger, I need to tell you something, but I don't know how." My heart started pounding. "Whatever it is, just say it." Melissa sat down across from me, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "My name isn't Melissa Williams. It's not even Melissa anything, and I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am or what I do." I set down the newspaper, trying to look surprised rather than terrified. "What do you mean?" "My real name is Sarah Elizabeth Kovach, and I'm a federal marshal, or rather, I was until 8 years ago." She took a shaky breath. "I've been living under deep cover for the past 12 years, and our entire marriage has been part of my witness protection assignment." The room seemed to spin around me. "Witness protection? What are you talking about?" "I was the lead federal marshal on a case involving a human trafficking ring operating out of Portland. The case took 3 years to build, and we finally had enough evidence to bring down the entire organization. But the night before the raids were scheduled to begin, my cover was blown." Melissa, Sarah, stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street as if she expected to see danger lurking in every shadow. The trafficking ring was run by a man named Dmitry Volkov. Russian mafia connections, millions of dollars in illegal operations, and absolutely no conscience about eliminating threats. When he found out I was a federal marshal, he put a price on my head, $2 million to anyone who could bring him proof that I was dead. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "So, the government put you in witness protection?" "Not exactly." Sarah turned back to me, her expression grim. "The Justice Department wanted to relocate me to some rural town in Montana, give me a completely new identity, and hope Volkov would eventually forget about me. But I'd spent 3 years watching him destroy the lives of vulnerable women, turning them into commodities to be bought and sold. I couldn't just disappear and let him continue operating. So, what did you do?" "I made a deal with my supervisor, Deputy Marshal Viktor Petrov. We would stage my death, make it look like Volkov's people had succeeded in killing me. In exchange, I would be allowed to continue working undercover, building cases against human traffickers and helping their victims escape." The pieces were finally clicking into place. "Viktor Petrov is the Victor you've been texting with?" Sarah nodded. "He's been my handler for the past 8 years. Officially, Sarah Kovach died in a car explosion in Portland. Unofficially, she became Melissa Williams, devoted wife and secret federal operative working to dismantle human trafficking networks across the Pacific Northwest. And me? What was I in all of this?" Sarah's face crumpled, and for the first time since I'd known her, she started crying. "You were supposed to be my cover story. When the Justice Department created the Melissa Williams identity, they needed her to have a believable life. A husband, a mortgage, normal suburban routines that would make her invisible to anyone looking for a federal marshal on the run." My mouth went dry. "So you married me as part of an undercover operation?" At first, yes. The words came out as barely a whisper. "I was assigned to find someone suitable, someone safe and predictable who could provide cover without asking too many questions. You were perfect on paper, stable job, quiet lifestyle, no criminal connections. The plan was to marry you, maintain the cover for a few years, while we built cases against Volkov's network, and then disappear when the mission was complete." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "But we've been married for 12 years. Because I fell in love with you." Sarah's voice was stronger now, more urgent. It was supposed to be a simple undercover marriage, but you weren't just cover, Roger. You became the most real thing in my fake life. Every morning for 12 years, I woke up grateful that my assignment had brought me to you. I stared at her, trying to process what she was telling me. So the woman I've been married to for 12 years is actually a federal marshal using me as cover while hunting human traffickers. Former federal marshal, Sarah corrected. Officially, I don't exist, but yes, that's essentially correct. And the Phoenix Network? Carmen told me you help domestic violence victims. Sarah's eyes widened. You talked to Carmen? How did you? She stopped, understanding dawning on her face. You've been investigating me. I found the text messages on your phone when Jake repaired it. I thought you were planning to hurt me somehow. Oh God, Roger. Sarah sank back into her chair. The Phoenix Network is my cover operation for the real work. We do help domestic violence victims. That part is true. But it also allows me to identify and infiltrate human trafficking networks. Many of the women who seek help through Phoenix are actually trafficking victims who don't even realize what happened to them. And now? Why are you telling me all of this now? Sarah's face went pale again. Because Dmitry Volkov found out that Sarah Kovacs is still alive. 3 days ago, one of his associates was arrested in Seattle, and during interrogation, he gave up intelligence about a federal marshal who'd been operating under deep cover in the Pacific Northwest. They don't know the name Melissa Williams yet, but they're getting close. How close? Close enough that Victor thinks we need to implement the extraction protocol. We've been preparing for this possibility for years. New identities, safe houses, enough cash to disappear completely. But Roger, she looked at me with an expression that broke my heart. I can't take you with me. If they find out who you are, if they realize you're connected to me, they'll torture you to get information about where I've gone. I felt a cold rage building in my chest, but not at Sarah. At the situation that had forced her to live in hiding for 12 years, at the criminals who had put a price on her head, at the system that had made her choose between her safety and the truth. What if I don't want you to go? Roger, you don't understand. These people don't just kill their targets, they make examples of them. They'll torture and murder anyone connected to me just to send a message to other law enforcement officers who might think about going undercover against them. Then we fight back. Sarah shook her head. There is no fighting back against the Russian mafia. There's only running and hoping they eventually give up, or there's bringing them down permanently. What are you talking about? I stood up, my decision crystallizing as I spoke. You said you've been building cases against them for 8 years. How much evidence do you have? Enough to destroy Volkov's entire operation, but we can't use it without blowing my cover completely. The moment we move against him, he'll know exactly who provided the intelligence. So we make sure he can't retaliate. Sarah stared at me. Roger, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that instead of running, we finish what you started. We take down Volkov and his entire network, and we do it in a way that ensures they can never come after us again. That's insane. You're an accountant, not a federal agent. No, I said, feeling strangely calm for the first time in days. I'm the husband of a federal agent, and I've been watching her work for 12 years, even if I didn't know it. You've taught me more about investigation and surveillance than you realize. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. If we do this, if we really try to bring down Volkov instead of running, there's no guarantee we'll survive. And if we fail, we'll die together instead of living apart in fear for the rest of our lives. You'd really do that? Risk everything for a woman who's been lying to you for 12 years? I reached across the space between us and took her hands. Sarah, I'd risk everything for the woman who's been protecting me for 12 years. The woman who's been saving other people's lives while keeping me safe. The woman who fell in love with me even when love wasn't part of her mission. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah smiled. Victor is going to think we're completely insane. Probably. But are you willing to try? She squeezed my hands. I've been fighting this war alone for 8 years. The idea of having a partner, having you as a partner. Yes, Roger, I'm willing to try. As we sat there planning our impossible mission against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country, I realized that my marriage to Sarah Kovacs was going to be nothing like my marriage to Melissa Williams. It was going to be terrifying, dangerous, and probably short. but it was also going to be completely, finally honest. And after 12 years of loving a woman I didn't really know, that honesty was worth any risk. The danger found us faster than we'd anticipated. It was only 2 days after Sarah had revealed her true identity when our carefully planned offensive against Dmitry Volkov suddenly became a desperate fight for survival. I learned that morning just how ruthless human traffickers could be when they felt cornered. I was at my accounting office going through the motions of a normal workday while actually researching Volkov's financial networks when my phone rang. Sarah's voice was tense, clipped, nothing like the woman who'd kissed me goodbye that morning. "Roger, listen to me very carefully. Do not go home. Do not go to any of your usual places. They found us." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean they found us?" "Victor just called. One of Volkov's men was spotted outside our house this morning, taking photographs. They know where we live, which means they know who you are." Her voice was shaking with controlled panic. "Roger, they've been watching us for at least 24 hours. Maybe longer." I looked around my office, suddenly seeing threats everywhere. The man in the parking lot who'd been sitting in his car when I arrived. The woman in the lobby who'd looked away too quickly when I glanced at her. The delivery truck that had been parked across the street all morning. What do I do? Get out of there right now. Don't take the elevator. Use the stairs. Don't go to your car. They'll be watching it. Walk 3 blocks north to the Starbucks on 5th Street and wait for me there. If I'm not there in 30 minutes, call Victor at this number. She rattled off a phone number I'd never heard before. Can you remember that? Yes, but Sarah, I have to go. I love you, Roger. Remember that. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, staring at my computer screen full of Volkov's financial records, then quickly deleted everything and grabbed my jacket. As I headed for the stairwell, I caught a glimpse of a man in a dark suit standing near the elevators, speaking quietly into a cell phone. When he saw me looking, he turned away, but not before I noticed the bulge under his jacket that could only be a weapon. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in the concrete stairwell. By the time I reached the ground floor, I was sweating despite the cool October air. I pushed through the emergency exit door, setting off an alarm that made me want to run, but I forced myself to walk calmly down the alley behind my building. The 3 blocks to Starbucks felt like the longest walk of my life. Every car that passed could contain killers. Every person on the sidewalk could be watching me. I'd gone from being a suburban accountant to being hunted by the Russian mafia in the span of 48 hours, and I had no idea how to handle that transition. Sarah was already waiting when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a clear view of all the entrances. She looked different. Her hair was darker, pulled back severely, and she was wearing clothes I'd never seen before. When she saw me, the relief on her face was unmistakable. "Thank God," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "I was terrified they'd gotten to you. What's happening? How did they find us so fast?" "Victor thinks someone in the Justice Department leaked information about my real identity. There's been speculation for months that Volkov has sources inside federal law enforcement, but we never had proof." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "This morning, Victor received intelligence that Volkov's people have been given not just my current address, but detailed information about my entire cover story. They know about Melissa Williams, they know about our marriage, and they know about the Phoenix Network." I felt sick. So everyone's in danger. "Carmen, all the other women you've helped. Victor's team is moving them to secure locations as we speak, but yes, everyone connected to the Phoenix Network is now at risk." Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "Roger, I need you to understand something. We can't go back to our old life, ever. Even if we manage to stop Volkov, even if we bring down his entire organization, there will always be someone else looking for revenge. The moment I revealed my true identity to you, you became a permanent target. So what are our options? We run, and we keep running for the rest of our lives. New identities every few years, never staying in one place too long, never forming lasting relationships with anyone." Sarah's voice was hollow. "Or we end this permanently." "How do we end it permanently?" "Victor has been working on a plan for years, something he calls the nuclear option. We use all the evidence we've gathered over the past 8 years to not just arrest Volkov and his associates, but to completely destroy their organization and eliminate their ability to retaliate. What does that involve?" Sarah glanced around the coffee shop, then leaned closer. "It involves me coming out of hiding completely. No more cover identity, no more pretending to be dead. I testify in open court about everything I've seen and heard over the past 8 years. We release financial records that implicate dozens of corrupt officials who've been taking money from Volkov. We expose the entire network in such a public, devastating way that anyone who tries to retaliate against us will be immediately identified and arrested. But that means giving up our life here, doesn't it? Yes. After we testify, we'll have to relocate under federal protection. New state, new identities, new everything. But Roger, she squeezed my hand. We'd be together. No more lies, no more secrets. Just us, starting over with complete honesty. I thought about our house, our friends, my job, everything that had made up my life for the past 12 years. All of it would disappear, replaced by the unknown. But as I looked at Sarah, really looked at her, seeing the federal marshal instead of the marketing coordinator, I realized I'd never really known who I was married to anyway. When would this happen? Soon. Victor thinks we have maybe 48 hours before Volkov's people make their move. If we're going to do this, we need to act fast. And if we don't do it? Sarah's expression grew grim. Then we spend tonight saying goodbye to everyone we care about, because tomorrow we disappear forever, assuming we live that long. I was about to respond when Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went white. We need to leave. Now. What is it? Victor just sent a photo from outside this Starbucks. There's a man in a gray jacket who's been watching us for the past 10 minutes. Sarah stood up, her movements casual but urgent. Don't look around, just follow my lead. We walked toward the back of the coffee shop, where Sarah pushed through a door marked Employees Only. The manager started to protest, but Sarah flashed some kind of badge that made him step aside immediately. We found ourselves in a small storage room with a door leading to the alley. My car's parked 2 blocks away, Sarah said as we emerged into the afternoon sunlight. But first, I need to know your decision. Do we run or do we fight? I thought about Carmen, hiding in that safe house apartment, terrified that her abusive ex-husband would find her. I thought about the 40 other women Sarah had helped over the years, all of them depending on people like her to keep them safe. I thought about Volkov and his network, continuing to destroy lives while law enforcement officers lived in fear of retaliation. We fight, I said, but I want to do more than just testify. I want to help you gather the evidence that will destroy them completely. Sarah stopped walking and stared at me. Roger, that's incredibly dangerous. These people kill federal agents for a living. Then it's a good thing I'm not a federal agent. I'm an accountant who's very good at following money trails, and I'm betting Volkov's organization has left a lot of financial breadcrumbs over the years. You'd really risk your life to help me bring down human traffickers? Sarah, I'd risk my life to help you bring down anyone who's been threatening the woman I love for 8 years. She kissed me right there in the alley, a desperate, fierce kiss that tasted like fear and determination in equal measure. When we broke apart, she was smiling for the first time in days. Victor's going to love this plan, she said. An undercover federal marshal and a forensic accountant working together to bring down the Russian mafia. It's either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. As we hurried toward Sarah's car, I caught a glimpse of a man in a gray jacket emerging from the coffee shop behind us. He was speaking urgently into a cell phone, his eyes scanning the alley. When he spotted us, he started moving in our direction. Sarah, I said quietly. I see him. Get ready to run. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and our 48 hours of preparation time had just become a race for our lives. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we had a real chance of winning. Because Sarah Kovacs wasn't running anymore. She was going to war, and she wasn't going alone. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our new home in Asheville, North Carolina, watching Sarah make coffee with the same careful precision she'd once used to plan undercover operations. The morning sun streamed through windows that looked out over the Blue Ridge Mountains instead of suburban Portland streets, and for the first time in 20 years, Sarah Kovacs was living under her real name. The takedown of Dmitry Volkov's organization had been everything Victor promised it would be, devastating, complete, and very public. What none of us had anticipated was how quickly other law enforcement agencies would move once we'd provided them with the roadmap to dismantle human trafficking networks across the entire Pacific Northwest. The financial evidence I'd helped gather proved to be the key that unlocked everything. 8 years of Sarah's undercover work had provided the human intelligence, but my accounting background allowed us to follow the money in ways that exposed corruption at levels we'd never imagined. When the final arrests were made, 12 federal officials, 37 local law enforcement officers, and over 200 individuals involved in human trafficking operations were taken into custody. Volkov himself died in federal custody 3 days after his arrest, apparently the victim of a heart attack, though Victor suspected it was actually poison administered by associates who couldn't risk him cooperating with prosecutors. Either way, the man who'd put a $2 million bounty on Sarah's head was no longer a threat to anyone. "Penny for your thoughts," Sarah said, handing me a mug of coffee and settling beside me at our small kitchen table. "Just thinking about how different everything is now." "Different good or different bad?" I looked at her, really looked at her, the way I'd been learning to do over the past 6 months. She was still beautiful, still had the same smile that had attracted me 12 years ago, but now I could see the steel beneath the softness, the strength that had allowed her to live a dangerous double life for nearly a decade. More importantly, I could see the peace that had settled over her features once she'd finally been able to stop running. "Different, amazing," I said honestly. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand, a gesture that still sent the same electric current through me it had for 12 years, but now carried the weight of complete honesty between us. "Do you ever regret it, learning the truth about who I really was?" I considered the question seriously. Did I regret losing my quiet suburban life, my predictable job at the accounting firm, the comfortable illusion that I was married to a marketing coordinator? Did I regret the weeks of terror when we'd been hunted by killers, the months of testifying in federal court, the necessity of relocating across the country under new identities? "Never," I said. "The only thing I regret is that it took 12 years for you to trust me with the truth. I wanted to tell you so many times, especially after I realized I was really in love with you. But the more I loved you, the more terrified I became of putting you in danger. And now," Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that lit up her entire face, "now you're in danger anyway because you're married to a former federal marshal who testifies regularly in human trafficking cases, but at least we're facing that danger together." It was true. Our new life wasn't completely safe. Sarah continued to work with Victor in the Justice Department, helping to identify and prosecute human trafficking operations across the Southeast. Her expertise was too valuable to retire completely, and honestly, she was too passionate about the work to give it up. But now she worked openly, with full federal protection and backup, and most importantly, with a partner who understood exactly what she was doing and why. My own life had changed dramatically as well. The Justice Department had offered me a position as a forensic accountant, specializing in organized crime financial networks. It turned out that 12 years of watching Sarah work, even unknowingly, had taught me skills that law enforcement agencies desperately needed. I was good at following money trails, and criminal organizations always left money trails. "Victor called this morning," Sarah said, interrupting my thoughts. "Good news or bad news?" "Excellent news. The Seattle trafficking ring we've been investigating just had 18 members arrested, including the police captain who'd been protecting their operations. And the evidence we provided led to the rescue of 23 women who'd been held against their will." I felt the familiar surge of satisfaction that came with knowing our work had directly saved lives. It was a feeling I'd never experienced as a suburban accountant, and one I'd become addicted to over the past 6 months. "Any of them need relocation assistance?" "Several. Victor wants to know if we're ready to start hosting safe house operations here in North Carolina." I looked around our house, imagining it filled with women like Carmen, people who needed protection while they rebuilt their lives after escaping hell. It would mean more risk, more uncertainty, more chances that our quiet mountain retreat could become a target. It would also mean more opportunities to make a real difference in the world. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "that I spent 8 years helping women in secret, always worried that my double life would eventually collapse and destroy everything I cared about. Now I have the chance to do the same work openly, with the man I love as my partner instead of as an unknowing target I had to protect. So that's a yes?" "That's a hell yes." I laughed, remembering the terrified woman who'd broken down in our Portland living room 6 months ago, confessing that our entire marriage had been based on a lie. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more confident, more complete. The federal marshal who'd been hiding inside Melissa Williams had finally been set free. "There's one more thing," Sarah said, pulling an envelope from her pocket. "This came in yesterday's mail." I recognized the handwriting immediately. Carmen. We'd been corresponding with her regularly since she'd been relocated to a small town in Montana where her abusive ex-husband would never think to look for her. I opened the letter and read aloud. Dear Roger and Sarah, I wanted you to know that I just got engaged to a wonderful man named David who owns a bookstore here in town. He knows everything about my past, and he loves me anyway. I never thought I'd be able to trust anyone again. But watching the two of you fight to protect each other taught me that real love is worth the risk. Thank you for saving my life, but more than that, thank you for showing me what a healthy relationship looks like. I hope someday I can help other women the way you helped me. Sarah was crying by the time I finished reading, the kind of tears that come from pure joy rather than sadness. That's why we do this work, she said, wiping her eyes. Not just to arrest the bad guys, but to give people like Carmen a chance at the kind of happiness we've found. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close and thinking about the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. 12 years ago, I'd married a woman I thought was a marketing coordinator, never imagining that she was actually a federal marshal living under deep cover. The revelation should have destroyed our marriage, but instead, it had made us stronger than we'd ever been. I love you, Sarah Kovach, I said, using her real name with the same satisfaction I felt every time I spoke it. I love you too, Roger Williams, even if that's not your real name anymore either. It was true. As part of our federal protection, we'd both taken new identities. I was now Roger Mitchell, forensic accountant and husband to Sarah Mitchell, former federal marshal turned anti-trafficking consultant. Our old selves had died along with Dmitry Volkov's organization, but our love had survived the transition. Ready for another day of saving the world? Sarah asked, finishing her coffee and checking her watch. Ready for another day of working with my partner, I corrected. As we gathered our things and prepared to head to the regional field office where we both work now, I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago. Suburban accountant Roger Williams had lived a quiet, predictable life, never knowing that his wife was a hero fighting a secret war against some of the worst criminals in the world. Roger Mitchell, on the other hand, was married to a woman who trusted him completely, worked alongside her to save lives, and went to bed each night knowing that their love was built on absolute honesty and shared purpose. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I'd taken Melissa's broken phone to Jake for repair, but it was the life I'd choose 1,000 times over. Because sometimes the most devastating revelations lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. And sometimes discovering that your spouse has been lying to you for 12 years is the best thing that ever happened to your marriage.